Happy Sunday. How are you? How was the rest of your Saturday?
Yeah, good. I mean, obviously the opening game of the day was Everton taking on Spurs, which is there was a few goals yesterday, weren't there?
26.
26 in
incredible.
What was it? 5 games now? Was it
5? Yeah.
Yeah. Lots of entertainment, lots of mistakes, errors, bad performances. Where do you want to start?
Well, if I was about to say a few defences might be shaking their heads this morning. We're going to start. Go on.
No, I was going to say a Brighton game, Palace. The mistakes in that game, especially by Palace, and Joachim Andersen, who's been a really good player for Palace, had his worst game for Palace. In what I've seen of him, he was all over the place. Look, he lost Gay alongside him, who got injured, who got taken off early. Their partnership, but he's way better than that. What we saw yesterday.
We'll talk more about that performance a little bit later on, especially as the pressure continues to heap on Roy Hodgson. But we're going to actually start at St James's Park. I mentioned 26 goals were scored. Well, 8 of them were in that game between Newcastle and Luton. It was a crazy game, and what was brilliant about it was that at one stage Luton come back from being behind in the game to lead 4-2, and then the Magpies scored 2 late goals to end up drawing it. They were looking, Newcastle, to build some momentum after inflicting a first Premier League home defeat on Aston Villa in midweek, but met a Luton team who are in fine form. Let's not forget they scored 4 goals against Brighton in midweek, and in fact they've scored 4 goals or more in consecutive league games for the first time since October 2017, when they were in League 2.
Wow.
What an ascendancy, as we all know, it has been for Luton. Let's hear from the Luton boss, Rob Edwards, then, who after the game spoke about just how he wanted to make the fans proud.
I think our supporters are on an amazing journey. They're enjoying themselves at the moment, which is what it's all about. We are in the entertainment business whilst we're in the winning business and wanting to be successful. And, I think we are that. I think everyone can see that we're giving everything and competing well, but actually showing quality as well. Tactically very, very aware. And, I like a lot of what we're doing and how we're going about it. And that's really pleasing. It makes me very, very proud.
And I'm sure Luton fans right now are really proud of what their team are doing. They're in some ways you could sort of say they're a bit of an unknown entity when they came into the Premier League for a lot of teams. And we weren't quite sure what we were going to expect. Many expected they were going to head straight back down. But my goodness, this side we're seeing is just showing incredible spirit, incredible fight. You can sense that togetherness within this team. And look, there have been off-field matters in terms of Tom Lockyer, for example, that has been a really emotional side of things football-wise for the team. But it has felt as though they've kind of been able to galvanise themselves even through those hard times and put in these incredible performances we're seeing. Yeah,
and you mentioned a word there, galvanised, and that is Luton Football Club. Because this is the club that felt they were harshly treated and with a 30-point deduction by the Football League many moons ago. And I had a connection through Gert John Steele, who managed there, who I know really well. Gary Sweet, the CEO, got to know Gary over the years as going to Luton on a regular basis. My wife's from Luton, so I've always had that connection. And watched a lot of football there. Mick Hartford, who I played with at Chelsea, who's Mr. Luton. And it's sort of embedded in their mentality. Now, that club has always... You've said it many a time now about going there and that small stadium, the atmosphere, what they create. That is Luton as a team. It's always been that type of club. Well, certainly for the last couple of decades.
I mean, it's one thing doing it at home. And as I say, we talked about it yesterday, looking ahead to this game, thinking that Kenilworth Road... You can feel why that might be a difficult place for many teams to go to, because it is a close, intense atmosphere that you've got to endure really for the 90 minutes or so. But for them now to be doing it on the road, and look, Newcastle themselves, we know, haven't had the season that they would have liked, obviously, bowing out of the Champions League like they've done early doors, and not having that consistency, as I say, that they would be wanting from their season. But still, to go to St James's Park and put 4 past Newcastle. You look at Luton's results this season, there haven't been many games that they've been blown away by teams.
Well, there's a big point here, because I think it's the basis of why Luton do well home and away, like they did yesterday, is that they've got a team that I always feel like they're on trial. They're everyone was talking about, they get promoted and it's going to be a long, difficult season, which it obviously has been for them, but they're going to hang in there. And I think all their players have a point to prove, that they're Premier League status. And I think that is their driving force. And that was a standout point yesterday in their performance, because they fell behind early on, could have collapsed. I watched Sheffield United later on the day, and I'm sure they collapsed pretty quickly yesterday, which Chris Wilder would have been furious with. And then you look at Luton, there's no collapse with Luton. Even if things don't go their way, they're going to roll up their sleeves and they're going to come after you and still do the right things. And, look at someone like Ross Barkley. Taking him on board as a player, and he's playing really well. He's playing the best football he's probably played for 3 years.
But that in itself shows about the recruitment team and about Rob Edwards as a manager, knowing that, one, he might be able to get the best out of Barkley, and we are seeing an incredible, once again, I mean, he's been brilliant pretty much week in, week out for Luton. But even taking on Andros Townsend, another leader, another experienced player that, when you're moving up from the Championship to the Premier League. Yeah, but when you're moving up from the Championship to the Premier League, it is a big jump for a lot of teams. And sometimes you need to think about what we need to add to our team. What experience can we add to our team? And that's where it's been, you could argue, that a brilliant recruitment from Luton to bring in the likes of Barkley and Townsend, for example. Yeah,
absolutely. It's what the club is about. And watching them go 4-2 up yesterday, and yes, they got pegged back, but, even the centre-forward Morris, he's been around the block a bit, and he's got to prove, and then he gets the opportunity to go to the Premier League, then he gets goals, and it's everything. The heartbeat of Luton is there for everybody to see, that this club is sort of run from top to bottom with an idea of that we all pull together as a club.
It's a point that has taken Luton up to 16th now in the table. Earlier on the day, with Everton drawing at Spurs, it meant Everton were out of the relegation zone. But because of that result for Luton, it means Everton now do remain in the bottom three. But Luton have gone above Nottingham Forest, who still have to play, of course. Do you think, though, with the Everton points deduction, that in a way, because at one stage we were looking at the bottom three and it was the three teams that had come up, and we were all expecting those three to go back down, just the way that the season was going for all of those teams. Do you feel like with the Everton points deduction, and of course they're appealing it, so we don't know what will happen with that, has that even helped Luton's cause a bit more in terms of galvanising them even more, thinking actually we can catch a team like Everton, we can surpass Everton?
Yeah, I don't know now. I think it's a valid point. But I would also say there's a part of me that thinks Luton thinks, no, let's stay up. We actually deserve to stay up.
Of course.
We stayed up with the, without that point, whatever happens to Everton, we stay up anyway. No, I feel that is the club.
Yeah.
And look, the supporters are, they follow them in huge numbers. It's a club that's always evolving. And I don't know, there's something about some things in life are roll up your sleeve and get dirty, get your hands dirty and fight on, and that is what Luton are as a club. I think they've had to experience a lot of downturn to get where they are today, and they ain't going back there easy, that's for sure.
You mentioned Sheffield United. They were part of the late game as Aston Villa went to Bramall Lane, and they were dismantled, the Blades, 5-0. It was a woeful performance. They were 4-0 down within half an hour of the game. In Premier League history, the three previous teams to accumulate as few as 10 points at this stage of the season have gone on to be relegated, and that is the situation. Sheffield United find themselves rooted to the bottom. They've won just twice all season. They're winless in 7 league games. They've conceded the most goals of any side at this stage of a top-flight campaign since the 1965-66 season. As I mentioned, 4-0 down after half an hour. Seats were rapidly emptying inside Bramall Lane, and the Blades boss, Chris Wilder, was asked about what he made of some of his fans leaving before even the half-time whistle had blown.
I totally understand that. It's like I said, there's no hiding place in there, so that weren't good enough from possibly first 5 minutes was all right, because I think we could have gone 1 or 2 up. Like, we had a couple of great chances, but after that, goals in succession, 4-0 down after 30 minutes. I totally get the reaction, so there's no complaints about that. We've done some decent things since we've come here, but we have to take everything that is said about us. It's part and parcel of being a pro, Al, part and parcel of being a manager, and when you're at this level, these things can happen, and I think you've seen it. You've seen some score lines, You've seen some big score lines, seen a big score line here this season. You know, you've seen a couple of others as well, and it can happen at this level, and it's ruthless, and there's no sympathy for anybody.
There were some boos heard at half-time. There were boos heard at full-time as well. Cass, Sheffield United's next game, Luton away next weekend. How much sympathy do you have for Chris Wilder in the situation that he's come into?
Well, when you know somebody and you think, and, you try and be very optimistic about their chances of survival. From the very off, I knew this would be a very difficult job for Chris to even consider keeping them up. He signed an 18-month contract. I think he wants to get to the end of that season and he'll make as much change as he can and is allowed to do. Because what I saw yesterday was a team. They played like a 5-4-1, but with that, and they did start the game really well. Chris was right. They had a couple of opportunities. But once the first goal, and the life of me, I don't know what Fotherington was doing in goal. Fotheringham for the goal, because he's come out where there's no need to be in that area, and he's basically made the easiest decision for a forward. Ollie Watkins just kept running into spaces. They kept getting lost.
As we expect him to do.
That's what he does. And I thought there was a lot of terrible decisions by players on the pitch during the game. Bogle made one that caused one of the goals. I'm not sure which one, but it was probably the second or third. But again, on the attack, gives the ball away to Douglas Luiz. Off they go, Villa, and they're really good at countering with pace. And there was too much space. They were always a yard off of getting close to the opposition. Sheffield United yesterday.
It did feel very easy for Aston Villa. You mentioned Ollie Watkins. By the way, he's become the first player to reach double figures for both goals and assists in the Premier League this season. That's 11 goals and 10 assists. In a word, I mentioned history will have to be created if Sheffield United were to survive this season. In a word, can they? Or do you think they're down?
Well, if I'm watching on the basis of yesterday's game, they've got absolutely no chance. Yeah. I'll be really interested how they get on against Luton, how they perform, because I know what Chris is like, and it will all be on, right, we're playing against the team who's got promoted last year, right? They've rolled up their sleeve. They've dug deep. Can you even match them? That will be his old drive. Won't be pretty of how we play and did we outplay them, create loads of chances. One thing that has happened in last week, Sheffield United conceded a few worldy goals. A few players have put one in the top corner against them. So I think the biggest test will be how they stand up and fight Luton in a game.
Well, in their last 3 meetings, they haven't beaten them. So twice in the Championship, Luton went unbeaten with a draw at home for Luton, and then they won away at Bramall Lane, and they've already won at Bramall Lane this season as well.